I am mining investor and editor of Resource Stock Digest, Gerardo Del Real, here with my partner and investor, Mr. Nick Hodge. He's also the publisher of Daily Profit Cycle, along with wearing many other hats. This is the 280th episode of our weekly therapy session that we like to call Investing in Bizarro World. We're going to talk markets. We're going to talk Jerome. We're going to talk gold. We'll get into maybe the shortest good-lived assassination attempt, a pole bump in the history of assassination attempts. A lot to get to, but first and foremost, as always, Mr. Hodge, how the heck are you, sir?
I continue to be well, and the family as well. I hope the same for your family. How are you?
Everybody is well. Everybody is healthy. As you know, health is wealth, and it starts from there. And all the rest of it is up to us to figure out and work out. And I think that's a perfect segue into where I want to start. I do want to start with the markets. Jerome spoke. Jerome decided he was going to sit still until September. The market, profanity cue there for everybody that's kids around. You might want to mute it. The market said, fuck you, Jerome. You're going to give us our stimulus one way or another. Market was down some 750 points. That would be the Dow. Small caps got hit. Everything got hit. And then, look, the bottom line is I now think that the betting odds suggest anyway, and I believe that September we absolutely get a rate cut. Not only do I believe that the markets want the rate cut, I believe they want the Fed to get really aggressive with the rate cut. So I'll say that to say this. We have an important jobs report that'll come out after you all listen to this episode. That jobs report is either going to provide the window and the data to justify a bigger rate cut than anyone anticipates, or it's going to provide the data to, give us the 50 basis points that I think right now the betting odds say is the likely cut. Either way, folks, September's a month away. This is a simple case, and again, we talked a bit off air. I said it last week. I think with the currency fluctuations in Japan, we're getting some funds that are blowing up out there. Not a coincidence that pretty much everything sold off. The one thing that did not sell off, and this is extremely bullish coming off historic monthly close, that's gold, baby. Gold is looking good. Sell off, profanity cue again, everybody. Sell off, fuck you, pay me. You're feeling good about the markets? Fuck you, pay me. People are losing their jobs? Fuck you, pay me. They try to kill Trump? Fuck you, pay me. Kamala's Indian, she's not black. Oh my God, fuck you, pay me. Gold doesn't care about what the hell's going on out there. It knows the world is batshit crazy, and it's acting as the store of wealth that it was always designed to do. Congrats to all the gold bugs out there on the historic monthly close. And look, the bottom line is the equities still, with a few exceptions, are still not participating. The better producers are, the rest are not. So first and foremost, heck of a mouthful there. I want to start with Jerome and policy and betting odds. I know you watched that pretty closely there.
Oh, I mean, you touched on a lot of stuff there. So there's a potential for a 50 basis point cut, as you said, in September. The market is obviously, really wanting it, as you mentioned last week. The upper class or the haves are starting to feel it as the time with higher rates wears on, and as inflation eats into whatever it is, their nest egg, and as the cost of living has been higher, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that on paper, the Fed wants to and has an opportunity to claim victory in terms of that soft landing or Goldilocks, right? I mean, you've got inflation, which has come down a tiny bit below 3%, not to their 2% target. And I think that they don't want to risk taking it too far and have, the stock market crash, et cetera. I also think they don't want to wait till too close to the election. So you are going to get a cut in September. That's something I've been writing about for a while. That's what the odds have said. And now they're creeping up. So it's pretty much 100% chance of a cut. And it's, right now it's 75%. Is it a quarter point or 25%? Is it a half point cut? So that's where it's at right now. You talked about the jobs number. I have to add something. You said the only thing that didn't go down was gold, and that's correct in terms of commodities and currencies. The dollar weakened, bond yields are down to their lowest since January, February, indicating that a cut is coming, at least on the 2-year side. But what didn't go down is rate-sensitive things on the S&P index side, right? So sectors of the S&P that are now the best performing since you and I last spoke are utilities and real estate, for example, as tech has started to roll over. And last week I was mentioning, those earnings, sort of Tesla earnings, and we were in earnings season. So the market has taken that opportunity to sell down some tech names that have had weaker earnings. And you look at the sector breakdown, and the sectors that were leading, like communications and information technology, are now lagging, at least over the past week. So what else? Yes, gold held in there beautifully. I mean, back above 24.50, at least it was for a second, looking at all-time record highs. And some of the bigger names, again, to what you said, are at 52-week highs. I mean, Agnico had great earnings. Alamos is looking great. There's stocks out there that are starting to perform. And then the junior end of the spectrum, and then some other commodities, and this is a point of distinction, that have been sold down. And that has to do with the first thing I mentioned, and that's the inflation coming down below 3%, because the commodities don't like the disinflation, right? So, oil is down in the mid 70s. Copper is now closer to 4. Silver has been waffling around. And I'm going to give you a similar answer or a similar comment to what I said last week. It's about time frame, right? Because in how you trade and how you look at markets, because I believe this disinflation, or this 2.7, 2.8% inflation number is only for a 3 to 4 or 5 month timeline, and it's going to head back up into 2025. So yeah, maybe the interim copper hovers down around $4, but again, long-term commodity super cycle that we're in, and that's sort of my long-term view on the markets. And we'll talk more about different aspects of the commodity markets and things, I'm sure. But last point, I guess, is volatility, and the VIX is saying that this is going to be short-lived. So back to earnings for a second. What happens during earnings season is that companies can't buy back their shares. And we know that when companies buy back their shares, it makes for a much smoother sailing market, because that's one of the main tenets of the market over the past couple of years. So the VIX is still below 20. I mean, it's creeping up there, but it's still below where it was just a couple of months ago in April. So I don't have my panties in a bunch yet, as it were.
The VIX is always fun to watch on a day where everybody's throwing in the towel, like today was on a lot of sectors, right? And I got to touch on it, because this is, I think, an indicator of just how much cover Jerome's going to have when it comes to that interest rate cut. Intel's reducing their headcount by 15% and suspending its dividend. I told you all last week, they're going to tell you, I wrote about this for Daily Profit Cycle. And by the way, you can go to dailyprofitcycle.com/subscribe to get those editorials every week from Mr. Hodge, myself, and the talented group of editors. Back to my point. I wrote about last week, an hour before the Fed rate cut, that it really didn't matter what Jerome said. What eventually be said is that rates have to come down to get the cost of capital down, and it was going to be explained to the working man and woman that this is being done so that homes could be more affordable and there would be more upward mobility. And while that is partially true, it is not being done for you folks. It is being done for rich people and asset owners, the Intels of the world, that are now having to clip 15% of its headcount and having to suspend its dividend. It's always worked that way in America. It's always going to work that way as long as we have a Fed that is controlled by the lobbyists and by the corporations that can afford those lobbyists, and the politicians behind the scenes that get to trade on insider information and suffer absolutely zero consequence for it. So as long as all those things continue, we know the general direction. So short-term volatility, the VIX didn't think so. It barely yawned today, right? It seems to think what I think. A rate cut is a month away. That's right around the corner. Yeah, August goes quick, and then everybody's excited and anticipating that. If we do have a bigger drawdown than expected in the commodity space, I highly encourage everyone to take advantage of it. Gold looks great. Silver, I think, is providing an opportunity in some of the better equities there. I think I'm finally ready to pull the trigger on that trade that I thought had got away from me. It's pulled back 15-20% the last couple of days. I like where it's at right now. That'll go out to Junior Resource Speculator, the subscribers here early next week, likely. Uranium, we're entering the seasonally strong portion of the uranium cycle as far as year-long purchases go. The bottom line is the utilities tend to go on vacation like everybody else in the summertime. Come September, they start getting back up there, and we're at the point where they have to start negotiating those long-term contracts. I expect upward pressure on the uranium price beginning towards the end of August, early September, and I expect that to be a sustained rally. I think we get back over 100 in pretty short order, and then, we're off to the races again, and it'll eventually overshoot before the eventual correction. Wash, rinse, repeat. You know the cycle. So a lot to like in the commodity space. It doesn't feel like it if you own the more speculative names. Hang in there, know what you own. I think, we talked about copper being closer to 4 than 450 right now. I'm comfortable with where copper is. I absolutely know where copper is headed in the midterm here, and am positioning accordingly. As you know, copper now is my largest single commodity exposure via the equities. So I think that the Filo Mining deal, where, Lundin and then BHP are coming in and, coughing up $4 billion is a prime indicator of how the majors that have the balance sheets are viewing this part of the cycle and what comes next in the copper space. So follow the money, folks. Sometimes it's that simple. When you see, capital dry up in the lithium space and companies mothballing production expectations and mothballing projects, entire projects, until prices recover, that is the cure for low prices. Every single one of these cycles plays out in the same way. Different commodities act differently in regards to how quick we go through the cycle. Lithium, like I told you last week, tends to be violent to the downside, violent to the upside. Anywhere between 12 to 16 months, you could have 52-week lows and 52-week highs in the same name. So be patient there. Know what you own. Know your timeline. And if you're dabbled in the most speculative of the companies, the micro caps, the penny stocks per se, be patient. Those will have their day and will provide a ton of leverage. It's just not that part of the cycle right now. It's the Kinrosses and the Agnicos that are delivering on good metrics and costs that are reaping the bulk of the rewards when it comes to higher commodity prices in something like gold that's seeing historic highs. So thoughts there on Jerome or anything in particular there?
But they're going to have to deploy that cash eventually, as we all know, and that's one of the things that underpin our whole philosophy and speculations in the junior resource sector, right? So, no, I'm ready to move on from Jerome, but I did want to say kudos and congratulations to you on the Filo deal. So, tying a couple of things together, that was a junior resource recommendation. That was, going back to March when we were talking about we entering the next phase of the commodity super cycle, and we had a webinar, invited people to participate and gave them 3 picks if they signed up to Junior Resource Speculator to participate in this next phase of the commodity super cycle. And one of those 3 recommendations was Filo Mining. That was 4 or 5 months ago, and over 40% ago. You mentioned taking out it was $4 billion, $33 a share, and more of that to come, I think. So this month, now we're in August, the 8th of 12, which is crazy that it's going that fast. You will begin to have monthly call-ins for that service, Junior Resource Speculator, that obviously the members can participate in monthly and ask you questions directly about your take on commodities, and obviously the recommendations that you've made in that service. So that is something that is brand new, and that is something that you don't and won't be doing for the monthly service, Junior Resource Monthly. So just wanted to get that out there that one, that's one of the bigger resource takeouts of late. 2, you had readers positioned in the speculative newsletter ahead of time, and 3, people can now have monthly access to you to discuss picks like that, whatever it is, buyout candidates, your prognostications for prices, whatever it is, by becoming a member of Junior Resource Speculator. So I will get a link in the description of this podcast for that. And if you're on our email lists, either at Daily Profit Cycle or Resource Stock Digest, or if you are a member of Junior Resource Monthly, you will, of course, hear about it in the next couple of weeks before that first one happens on the 16th. So I'll take my sales hat on now, and we can move on to the next topic.
Hey, folks, you could pay to make fun of my hair and tell me I look like Joe Pesci to my face.
Well, you were already doing the Goodfellas.
Gotta love the comments. I had to tie that one in because the comments are always hilarious. What do we want to talk about? I want to talk about I want to shout out a company that just executed an absolute brilliant deal that I think is going to provide a path towards profitability in the very near term. And I think is a heck of a speculation. And like everything else that comes out of my mouth, it's absolutely biased, or would it be coming out of my mouth? People say biased like it's some bad word. Like, damn right I'm biased. I'm biased about everything. My kids, my wife, a company that, we've created, companies that we've created, my investments, and the ideas that I bring your way. So biased shareholder here. I'm talking my own book. It's all my own book that I talk. But I put my money where my mouth is with this company and written a check several times. Of course, MineHub Technologies just struck a partnership deal with ABEX, I believe is the name of the company. And look, that's a $400 million company. MineHub is a $23 million company, Canadian. And man, does ABEX make one hell of a dance partner. I won't get into the intricacies and the synergies of the two companies merging, but here's what I see happening. I see MineHub, which trades at 33 cents the last that I checked. I see a clear path to $1 for MineHub here over the next several quarters. I see a path where they don't have to raise money again. I then see a path where people start realizing the companies working together, they're going to monetize several products based on the platforms merging. And I think once people see the profit potential there, because of the brilliant people that are involved on both sides, both sides have just world-class teams at their disposal. I think MineHub one day is going to be a $2, $3, $4 company before it's eventually taken out. So a lot to like there. I like companies that are doing something that no one else can do. And this combination further enhances that profile and that moat for MineHub Technology. So congrats to MineHub and the team there. Andrea, Vince, Sirachi, executive chairman, and the whole team. Brilliant what they've been able to do, and happy to be a shareholder and follow along for the next chapter there.
Yes, and I can give some more color and have been covering the company, have invested in the company, and it's a recommendation of mine as well in Hodge Family Office. And it's part of a bigger theme that I've talked about and we've talked about over the past couple of years. And so let me take a step back and talk about battery passports for 1 second, and then I'll transition into the MineHub thing. So in Europe, and starting in 2027, you're going to have a battery passport if you sell an electric car, and that it's just like the sticker on the window. It's going to show you, where the critical minerals came from that are in the battery, the cobalt, the lithium, et cetera, the graphite, what component of that was recycled, and then emissions data that's associated with the production of those minerals that went into the battery. So this is a requirement, and I've said that it was, going to be coming that way. So 2027 is only a couple of years away, and already Volvo is compliant in the European Union, issuing these battery passports on the EVs that they're selling. And so the need for data and a platform that tracks everything that goes into that, as you can imagine, is immense, right? From all the various commodities that are involved, to all the different mines and sites that they come from, to all the different fuel suppliers that need to be tracked, that provide the fuel that go in the equipment that mine things, to the smelters, to the distributors, shippers on down the line, right? And so there are a few companies who are working on doing this data, but it ties it even more broader than the battery passport, right? Because we know globally there's emission targets that people are trying to hit, ESG targets that people are trying to hit, and in general, there's also still a lot of ongoing fraud in the mining business, because things are still done by pencil and paper and email and not tracked digitally. So you've seen over the past couple of years, whoops, $18 million worth of copper shows up and it's painted rocks. Like, those stories aren't that infrequent, right? And it's weird to think that happens in 2024. So you need a lot of data tracking, and you need a lot of analysis, and you need a platform that these companies can input and onboard their partners to get that data into. And MineHub is one of those companies. They have a platform. They're already providing services for ESG tracking, for emissions tracking, for shipment tracking of specifically copper and aluminum. I'm talking now, on ships and to and from ports, et cetera. All that is done through a combination of technologies that include such buzzwords as blockchain and artificial intelligence, et cetera. So that's MineHub. And they've been able to sign up some really big clients, like the biggest copper producer in the world, one of the largest copper wire producers in the world, et cetera. And there's just some other ones. And Wheaton was involved in developing the technology, and ING on down the line. So it's a real deal. It's a real technology, and it's got real customers signed up, and it's growing, and it's been generating record quarterly revenue for several quarters ongoing, right? And it's to that point now where it's almost to the point of being able to get to self-funding. And that brings us to the deal with ABAX, which owns an exchange, a Singapore-based commodities exchange, that it's trying to, become the default exchange for commodities that are involved in the energy transition, including natural gas and copper. And you can imagine that if these are energy transition minerals, that they would want emissions data and sustainability data, et cetera, that's associated with the metals that are trading on their platform. The other thing that ABAX is involved in is they were the founding shareholder of something called Base Carbon, which deals with the voluntary the carbon market globally, financing it, tracking it, making it transparent, et cetera, right? Things that could be enhanced and augmented and improved with the platform that MineHub has. So, and then just a second on the team, because you mentioned it. So ABAX is Joshua Crumb's deal. He's a former Goldman Sachs commodity head who is founded a company called Gold Money. That's a publicly traded company. And he's also involved with a company called MENE, M-E-N-E, that sells 24 karat gold jewelry that he's partnered with, or at least is headed up by a gentleman named Roy Sabag. So, and there's also a guy named Jeff Curry, who is on the board of ABAX, who is the former head of commodities at Goldman Sachs. So these are real people in the commodity space that know what's going on globally, that have connections and see where the space is headed. And so what ABAX did with MineHub is a share transfer deal where ABAX gave MineHub shares in exchange for some MineHub shares, and then also got warrants that are priced a couple of cents above where the MineHub shares are currently trading, but that expire in just 2.5 months. So that money is likely to come into the till. If you read between the lines and understand that ABAX is supportive of MineHub. And so all that taken together, it's a lot, but it's good because you can tell that ABAX is supportive because Josh Crum is out on Twitter tweeting about it, 10 reasons he likes the deal, et cetera. Should be, in my mind, the last round of sort of, bridge financing or the last sort of deal that MineHub needs to get to self-funding, and it gets the partnership and the synergies, if you have to use that word, that come with partnering with ABAX. So it's a darn good deal. The market understood it. The MineHub shares went right to that warrant price at 35 cents. And so I'm interested to see it get executed and consummated and keep it going, right? Because, as I said, Volvo is already out there with a battery passport. And if these companies, right, the Codelcos, the Southwires of the world, they want to be able to get their products into electric vehicles, into solar panels, into wind turbines, they're going to have to be certified by whatever benchmark comes, battery passport, Monroney sticker, however that ends up getting developed. But the key, and those who are going to generate a lot of revenue from that, are those that hold the data and make it transparent. And MineHub has a seat at that table in a very real way. So that was a bit of rambling there, but it's a pretty impressive deal. And I think MineHub has a pretty impressive future ahead of it.
I agree. Well said. We talked gold. I got to ask you about silver. You are the chartist amongst us. How does that look? I can tell you how it feels. It feels bullish. It feels like, minor correction pullback on the way past 30 again. And, hopefully it holds it here on the next leg higher, given the fact that we know a rate cut's coming in September, right? And I think that's going to be inflationary, which again speaks to the reason why I don't know why we have a Fed. So the same Fed that caused the inflation now can claim a victory for a soft landing on raising rates to fight the inflation. And now that we maybe achieved that soft landing, if you want to just go ahead and not argue with the guy and with that institution, they're going to turn right back around and start doing what got us the inflation, which was cut rates. And then here we go again. And it's one big circle jerk on inflation and rate cuts and rate hikes. But anyhow, I digress. How's that silver chart looking, Nick?
It's going back and forth as a couple of things have been, including oil. And so, it's bearish, it's bullish. I'm talking in the short term now. So in the very short term, 1 month to a couple of, a month and a half time frame, it's the chart has broken down. But on a 6 month and longer sort of time frame, if you look at it like that, it's still got a bullish chart. And so it needs to recapture sort of the 2950 level in a meaningful way to go back higher. But it's long-term bullish and short-term bearish. So you got to go back to sort of time frames, which was an answer I gave you last week as well.
Agreed.
But some of the equities you were saying are weak, and so there's an opportunity there. Like
yes.
I haven't dove deep anyway. But like First Majestic, Endeavor, those stocks were down just today, Thursday, before we recorded this. 20% in a single day on earnings announcements, and so the volatility that's inherent in the silver space, because pointing back to gold being strong and bullish, and the beacon and rock of stability. It tells me that that's going to pull silver back up, right? And so while silver's gone down in the short term, I think that it's going to, gravitate back towards gold. And so I think there's an opportunity in silver equities for sure.
I couldn't agree with you more. Let's get to the social political commentary portion of this podcast, which you can't avoid at this point, right? There's just so much going on. You can't avoid it. So, a couple of weeks ago when the assassination attempt on former President Trump occurred, I said, and I stick to it, right? I'm not going to politicize it. Not, that just shouldn't happen to either party. That's not how the rule of law operates in this country. And, though it's rather frequent, historically that we have these attempts, that doesn't mean by any stretch of the word that they are justified, regardless about how you feel about whichever candidate is being
shot at
or, injected with COVID or whatever you believe, right? Whatever crazy conspiracy theory you want to believe. What I did say was, and we talked about this last week, that I thought picking J.D. Vance would be beneficial for the simple fact that it showed some mental flexibility, because J.D. Vance had historically been very, very critical of Mr. Trump. Went as far as calling him potentially a Hitler type figure is what he said at one point. This isn't like 10 years ago, guys. This is like 2 years ago, right? And so I thought that spoke to, Mr. Trump's flexible mind and saying, hey, I know at one point this guy disagreed with me, but I think there's some things in common. I think, he's a good vice presidential pick that can bring something different to the campaign. Well, all that's happened since all of that goodwill was raised by Mr. Trump and in that historic picture, and his call to fight and reacting as quickly and sharply as he did during that horrible attempt. That goodwill seems to be fading pretty quickly. I mean,
it's like copper at $5.
He's like copper at $5, guys. J.D. Vance had himself a hell of a week last week, right? Or the week before. We talked about it on last week's podcast. He hasn't done himself any favor since then. And Mr. Trump looks like the old guy that he was calling Sleepy Joe before. He looks like the guy that can't hold the thought together. He looks like the guy that all of a sudden is more prone to rambling and confusing people, confusing names. He had a journalist meeting with a journalist association for Black reporters and journalists. And I mean, look, whatever you think of the guy, he came across as an asshole during that meeting, so much so that his own people cut him off after, 20 or 30 minutes of sitting down. He couldn't answer a question straight. It was just, it just looked bizarre, right? And so I say all that to say, this is the fastest dissipation of goodwill after an assassination attempt that I have ever seen, because almost no one is talking about the assassination attempt anymore. But the FBI, who keeps leaking shit out there for whatever reason, right? I think trying to cover their ass, basically. And again, keeps leaking that it was Secret Service, it was the local police, it was everybody but us, wasn't us, right? But man, that went downhill quick. Any thoughts, Nick? What are the betting odds looking like? I haven't looked. You always keep track, but what does that look like? I'm curious to see because we talked before, and immediately after the attempt, we were like, oh, he looks like a shoo-in. I don't know if that's the case anymore. There's 100 days left to this election.
Yeah, first of all, I very much look forward to not voting for either of them. And I still think the Democrats did themselves a disservice by ostracizing RFK, but that's not what you asked me. So the betting odds on Poly Market with $500 million on the line, $474 million in the pool is right now Trump 53, Kamala 45. Those are percentage.
That's close. Hell of a lot closer than it was with Biden.
We mentioned last week her VP candidate. We don't know who it is yet. I imagine by the time you hear this podcast, it will have been announced that it's Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. He's now pulled ahead to 76% chance of being the VP candidate, and she announced that she's going to go on tour with her VP candidate in Philadelphia next week. So that makes all the sense in the world. Gosh, yeah. I mean, we talked about how J.D. Vance was a good pick, and then we talked about the couches and his cat lady stuff, and the reproduction stuff. At the same time, I see some disingenuousness on the other side. Let me stop there for a second. I think some of this polling, you see, I'm sure you've seen it. Kamala's pulling up to close to even in swing states, battleground states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, etc. It feels to me, and take that with a grain of salt because it's feels, but that feels like Hillary Clinton was doing in the polls in 2016 to me. So I'm old enough to remember that. I see Kamala down in Atlanta. I see her rallying the base. Like I see Mr. Buttigieg out there smiling, and I see people applauding, and I see them, the white girls and boys breaking Zoom and raising millions of dollars. Like I see all that. And I see the betting odds closing a little bit. And so I'm honestly not sure what to think. It's obviously very interesting. And I can't help but wonder where this, fervor for Kamala was 3-6 months ago, right? Like, how did she become the it girl overnight when she wasn't 3 months ago? So that's what I meant by the disingenuousness, not disingenuousness on her part. I mean, by the entire party, right? That, oh, now it's Kamala, right? But anyway, like I say, I'm looking forward to not voting. I'm not sure well, I shouldn't say that. Elections are obviously always important, and abstaining from them for me has been important, and I think is worthwhile. Some people say you should not vote, but for me, it's like a boycott, right? Like I'm not going to vote for a candidate that I don't believe in, and I don't believe in either candidate and haven't for some time now. So I think I forget what the question was, but it's all been very interesting, and I'd love to grab the popcorn and watch it. What are your thoughts on it all?
I'm trying not to vote in this election, guys. I'm trying not to vote. Everybody that knows me knows I don't like either major political party. You all know my feelings on. I really dislike the Fed as an institution. I think it's hindered upward mobility for decades now. I think it's very intentional. I think it's evil if you're in the lower to middle class trying to, lift yourself up by your own bootstraps, as they like to say. I think they're making it very, very difficult. And again, this coming from a kid that comes from immigrant parents that came to this country and was able to go from literally nothing, or maybe negative nothing, right? To where I am today, relatively comfortable and successfully co-owning 2 companies with Mr. Hodge, and, financially independent and happy and love what I do. And, I still believe America's the best thing going. And I think that, the chances of someone like me being able to come to this country with parents that only spoke Spanish, me learning the language, watching cartoons when I was 5-6 years old, and being where I am during the same generation, it's really an American thing. And not to say it's not possible in other places, but I've looked at other places. We talked last week about us looking at other, countries to live in for tax reasons, for safety reasons, and it's still the best thing going, right? However, it doesn't mean we don't try to make it better. Back to the original question, who am I voting for? Or am I voting? They're making it hard for me, and I'm talking Republicans now. I'm talking to you guys. Let me go piss off that side right now. You guys are making it really fucking hard for me to not vote for the Democrats, because every time I give y'all a chance to just say, actually, that's not true. You guys go do something like what you did today. Go vote against the child tax credit for families that really depend on that child tax credit, while simultaneously paying $2 billion in interest on the national debt that just surpassed $35 trillion, giving rate cuts to us, the wealthy, the asset owners. Thank you. I'll be richer because of it. And starting wars, and that's going to be my next thing. We're going to talk Iran and Israel in a little bit. And starting wars and funding wars all over the world. Meanwhile, we can't give the kids in Flint some clean drinking water, and you guys can't vote for something as universally bipartisan as giving families that have children a child tax credit if they're out there working and earning that, right? Things like that. When I hear them talk about immigration, there's still zero comprehensive plan. It's just kick everybody out. All the crime is committed by immigrants that Kamala and Joe let in. But that's our solution. They're so light on solutions on that side right now. And then I look at the left, and I'm just so disappointed by the continuous, you said disingenuous. Yes, they've been disingenuous in so many ways on immigration. They haven't provided a path forward. They've had decades to do it. They've had multiple terms. Obama had multiple terms. They've promised to do it. They still haven't delivered a comprehensive path for people that can be outstanding and upstanding citizens in this country that want to contribute, that don't have a criminal record, that want to work, that want to provide much needed, labor on all across many sectors. You don't give those people an opportunity to contribute and get to experience the American dream the way that I have. And so there's so much on both sides that I'm trying to take a step back here over the next month or two and see hoping that neither party forces me to vote for a party that I really don't want to vote. Because the answer is I don't want to vote for either of them. Because whatever my little vote is worth, I don't believe either party deserves that vote. In the words of I forget who it was, but said he used to say, I don't vote because it only encourages the bastards. I think it was PJ O'Rourke, right? Hilarious political satirist. I'm watching the next couple of months the lack of compassion to women and reproductive rights from the right really bothers me. The wanting to stack the Supreme Court on the right because they want to, and making it an activist court with an activist agenda. That's just one way. It would bother me if it was the Democrats doing it. It really bothers me that either party is doing it, but that is the Republicans that are doing it, and that's fine when it goes your way. It's not fine when 3 of them die and you have a Democratic president and now they're playing the same hardball that you were playing a term or 2 terms ago, but it's to the left.
Democrats don't play it as good. You remember?
Yeah, they don't. Come on. They don't. You're 100% right. But these are really big consequential issues.
Mitch McConnell beat him up with that shit. That's pathetic. Anyway.
He's like, you guys have to learn how to play hardball, right? And my point is these issues are so consequential when we talk about women's reproductive rights, access to healthcare, access to contraception, the Supreme Court justices, and the corruption that is evident there now. All of these things are big long-term issues that I have a hard time just sitting out. But man, they're making it tough. They're making it tough to believe. And I really hope that over the next month or two, we can get back to debating policy and not whether Kamala is black or Indian. That was the big trending thing this week. Mr. Trump and the Republican Party, you are not doing yourself any disservice by alienating both blacks and Indians with this debate. Should matter. And what, how you define black and how you define Indian, nobody gives a fuck. I certainly give 2 flying fucks. I care more that, Kamala was a prosecutor and locked up, hundreds and thousands of people for marijuana infractions. You can argue that was her past, but there's things there that bother me as well. So I'm just watching, man. I'm just watching. I really don't know what I'm going to do yet. My initial approach was to not vote, and it's my conscience is making it harder to take that stance because of some of the things that the parties are doing. I just don't know which way it's going to shake out over the next couple of months. Next couple of months are important for my vote.
Yeah, that was a really great answer, and I don't want to belabor the point, but it's tough for me, right? Because I know that Trump is better for my wallet, but I obviously, don't like some of the social stances and the way he carries himself and the way he goes about things and the way he panders to the middle and lower classes, right? Like he's got those 50, 60, 70-year-old middle class, lower class white males wrapped around his finger when we all know, except for them, that the Republican Party has been the party of, anti-union and not raising the minimum wage. And as you were saying, family benefits and things like that. So it troubles me that they're voting against what I know is their best interests. And then they do so vehemently. And that's why I don't like the Trump cohort. And then you said it about Kamala is very chameleon-y, whether or not you like that or not.
That's a good nickname. Chameleon-y Kamala. Chameleon-y Kamala.
Have you seen Trump? He was spelling out the nicknames. What was he saying?
Oh, God.
Laughing Kamala. Laffin apostrophe. He was spelling it out from the podium. He was like, what are you doing,
What are you doing?
Anyway, so I'm still in the no vote. And the other thing I don't like about the Democrats, and I've said this before, is the my fair share. They're always telling me that I got to pay my fair share, and I don't know what my fair share is, and they never say what my fair share is, and they don't tell me what the income threshold is for that, although I know it's going to be sort of, below what I make. I'm going to get lumped in with the 0.01%, even though I'm the 1%, right? And that's, for me, as a wallet or a tax issue voter, a strike against the Democrats for me. So I'm still in the no vote camp. I like looking at it and I obviously follow along, but interesting times for sure.
Well, and if that wasn't enough to make it interesting, folks, Israel decided it was going to go ahead and assassinate Hamas political leader. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. Apologies. Ismail Haniyeh. And this is going to have a direct response, folks. Make absolutely, be absolutely clear and just make no mistake about it. This isn't something you do, however you feel about Hamas and however you feel about the politics in the region. I'm no geopolitical expert and certainly not an expert on Middle Eastern policy. What I do know is that you can't murder with a drone and AI a political leader on foreign soil and not expect to have a very, very, very proportionate or disproportionate response. And it's not just going to come from Iran, right? It's got 5 or 6 countries that are closely allied with Iran that are likely going to be participants. Israel is our proxy in the Middle East. Let's be clear about that. So when
we had a $5 million, I think we had a $5 million reward on that guy's head.
A hit. Yes, we had a $5 million hit on his head, put money on his head, right? And so when you look at the way that that's looking, again, we speak to the consequences of elections. The one thing I have liked about Mr. Trump in past cycles, anyhow, past elections, is his unwillingness to just go into wars for the sake of maintaining tradition. He was actually, and so it was J.D. Vance, actually, one of the people that was really against, funding the Ukrainian side, however you feel about it, about the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, with an open checkbook for, until infinity. And I want to see less government. I want women to have rights, however you feel about that. I want women to make their own choices about their own bodies. I want me to be able to drink whatever I want to drink, as long as I'm being safe about it. I want people to smoke whatever they want to smoke, as long as they are doing it in a safe manner. And I don't want my taxpayer dollars to go around the world to bomb kids and moms that did nothing wrong, but were born geographically on the wrong side of history, right? And so I don't know what Mr. Trump's stance is right now. He talked about being chameleon-y. He's been very chameleon-y about that. I think he's afraid to piss off donors. I'd like to think that he believes in less war. I said $35 trillion in debt, $2 billion a day in interest. None of this is sustainable. Real forth-turning stuff, folks. Where we're at is an inflection point for our country. And these decisions, as limited in quality as they are going to have, they're going to be very consequential. So I encourage everybody to vote with an open mind. I encourage everybody to look at whether or not the people, whichever side you want to vote for, that you're voting for have your best interest at heart. And then I encourage you to look around and ask yourself whether maybe the other party, whichever party you're in favor of, do they present a better solution for you? And just do so based on the ideas and the proposals. And ultimately, that's the approach that I'm going to take. And then we'll see if I decide to vote or not. Because again, it seems too consequential not to, but at the same time, they're both making it really tough on me, Nick. So that was my rant.
Yeah, really tough in a post-truth world, right? and my wife was saying the other day, I don't even know what's true on the internet anymore. She was telling me, I was like, yeah, it's wild out there, man. And so, the guy in Tehran in Iran wasn't the only one. They hit an Hezbollah leader in Beirut, Lebanon that day as well. And so I'm no expert, but I watched BBC for 25 minutes before I fell asleep that night, so I can tell you what I heard on there. And that's that. It was showing these, how they position the Islamic terrorist network or these opposition groups. They say. Anyway, it was Israel showing them that they can fucking get you anywhere, basically, is what I was saying.
Sure.
And it might not necessarily lead to an escalation because Hezbollah and Hamas doesn't have, the capability to hit Israel like that. So, we'll see. There's so much back and forth, right? Israel kids are killed on a soccer field. Israel soldiers are raping people in the butt. Like, you don't even know what to believe or who's putting what out. And so for me, I'm so far removed from it. Sort of the same with, Russia, Ukraine, that, I've got 3 kids in elementary school and 2 businesses to run and, 12 employees or whatever it is that, sometimes you got to pick and choose your issues, right? And obviously the images are brutal and sad, but it's not one that is like a voting issue for me, and it's not one that I have necessary expertise on or know where it's going to go. So I sort of read the headlines and take it as it comes. What I typically do is I see those headlines and I go say, what's oil doing? What's gold doing? What's Bitcoin doing? Right? And gold was up. That day that they were having those 2 assassinations, and gold, oil not so much. So. Anyway, back to that breakdown in commodities, right? Where not even multiple assassinations and in Israel, Iran, Hezbollah war can get oil back over $80. So anyway, that's how I sort of watch and think about things. I obviously don't know where they're going to end up like most people don't. But I think you said it well. And the next couple of months here are going to be interesting. And I think you're going to crystallize, people's minds for which way they're going to vote.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I want to leave everyone with a quote here, and I had a screenshot it the other day because it stuck out to me. And the comment that your wife made about, and you made about, you don't even know what the hell is true anymore, right? And so this quote is from a German historian and philosopher, and I'm going to butcher her name too, so apologies, Hannah Arendt. And it says, this constant lying is not aimed at making the people believe a lie, but at ensuring that no one believes anything anymore. A people that can no longer distinguish between truth and lies cannot distinguish between right and wrong. And such a people deprived of the power to think and judge is without knowing and willing it, completely subjected to the rule of lies. With such a people, you can do whatever you want. And that is my point about the whole show, guys. Both sides sit behind the scenes, trade on inside information, apply laws to your reproductive rights, and send money to wars that they're not going to fight and to laws that they don't have to abide by because they have the financial capabilities to go to a place where you can have those procedures done. And, I could go on this, but the point is to distract us. This is the modern day version of the Colosseum, right? To keep the populace distracted and divided. And Again, I encourage everyone out there, don't play the division game. Argue civilly, disagree civilly, fight for your ideas, but do so with your mind and do so with your wallet. The days of going out there and getting yourself killed or killing someone for a politician that wouldn't throw, 2 punches on your behalf and, is looking to take your rights away in a lot of cases and put your safety in jeopardy. Those should be way behind us. And I hope in this next turning, we get to the point where we're fighting with ideas and thoughts and logic and less, in the streets and the way that it is right now, because it's all a game meant to divide everybody. It's not a game meant for you to win, y'all.
Yeah, you definitely put yourself a step ahead if you can see through it.
That's it. Anything else that is on your mind, Mr. Hodge?
No, that's 50 minutes. That's getting long in the tooth. We'll be into the second week of August here soon, and so soon enough, you and I will be going to Peru. We will be going to Beaver Creek. Conference season will be here, and I'm looking forward to that. So summer will be over before you know it.
I can't wait. You all know how I feel about Hannon. Filo at $4 billion, I think that's cool. Having 3 or 4 Filos in one company that currently has a market cap of about $60 million and the upside between 60 and 12 billion. That's cooler, folks. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with Mr. Nick Hodge. This was the 280th episode of our weekly therapy session that we like to call Investing in Bizarro World. Have a great week, everyone. Have a phenomenal August. Excited for Peru in September. Excited for Beaver Creek. If any of you will be out at Beaver Creek, please reach out to us. Please say hello. Would love to catch up. We'll have a camera crew out there. We're going to be doing live video interviews with everyone. And that's always a fun and informative conference. So have a great week, everyone.
See ya.
Hey there, you independent-minded investor. If you like this video, make sure to tell us so by clicking the like button below. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another one. And share it with everyone you know on social media. You can also click the link in the description below to check out more information-packed videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.